Well, here we are. It's November. It's honestly not that cold. It's supposed to be 70 degrees. I think I seen you had shorts on underneath that this morning.
I did.
Seriously?
I did. Yep.
I mean, it won't be the first time that you had your air conditioning on in my truck and I had the heat seat on.
Do you have long johns on?
I do, absolutely. Why not? It's November. But it's supposed to be warm out. Normally I'd be duck hunting or in the deer stand right now, but it's a great time of the year to catch fish, and it's obviously seasonally warm. I'm with my good buddy Tyler Nickel here. We're up in Green Bay on the Fox River, one of the major tributaries that flow into the Bay of Green Bay. And we're gonna go out here today and, pitch some jigs around, maybe throw some blade baits, crank baits. I'm not sure what it's gonna be yet, but I heard they're biting. It's good weather, and so I'm hoping to show you the next bite.
Just looking for the next bite, next bite, next bite, next bite. I'm just looking for the next bite. It's the
It's well known that walleyes move into current areas in the spring and fall, either to spawn themselves in the spring or capitalize on an abundance of food in the fall while many bait fish are spawning. The Fox River on the south end of Green Bay is the perfect place to concentrate efforts in both time frames.
I mean, it is fun no matter when you're catching them on a jig. It doesn't matter if they're 15 inches or if they're 25 inches. When they hit a jig, it's so fun. Just because it literally just jolts the rod, especially in this fall time frame. I mean,
Green Bay is an extremely healthy walleye fishery, and in the fall, those hungry walleyes concentrate in a relatively small area, making it a great opportunity to catch a lot of fish.
today we're out here on one of the major tributaries that flow into Green Bay, in particular the Fox River on the southern end. And one thing you get a lot of times in the fall time frame is a big influx of bait that moves into a lot of these rivers. In particular, the Fox River has a lot of warm water discharges, and that warm water brings in a lot of shad. Lake shiners really congregate in front of those discharges. When you bring that much food into a river, generally there's going to be a lot of fish behind it. And in the fall time frame, if you can get around a lot of bait, there's going to be fish there because they want to put on as much of the feed bag as they can coming on in the winter. So don't be intimidated by a lot of these hot water discharges where there's just a pile of bait. I mean, it's busting on the surface and seagulls are diving on it. If you can put a bait in front of these fish's mouth this time of year, more times than not, you're going to get that fish to bite.
There's one, Korey.
Got it?
Got him.
Need the net? How's it feel?
Feels good.
A little chunker.
On the blade bait.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It seems like, you can really cover water with that blade bait. Once you've kind of honed in on some fish, it's always nice to slow down. There we go. Nice fish there. I mean, probably feels pretty good on that blade bait when they crack that thing, huh?
Yeah, he definitely cracked it. Cracked it on the fall. I just kind of was lifting it slow and then, dropping it down on the tight line, and he cracked it.
Yeah, it's always nice to have a guy, throwing a blade bait. You can fish that so much deeper than you can a light jig, especially in this current, and you can cover water faster. So it's always nice to kind of search with a blade bait, but then really slow down with the jig. All right, let's get this girl back.
The next bite is brought to you by Mercury Marine. Go boldly. Tracker Boats. Fish the finest. Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Your adventure starts here. Berkeley. Catch more fish. And Power Pole Total Boat Control. Closed captioning for the next bite is provided by Precision Trolling Data, the authority for crankbait diving depth information. There is no better time to fish walleyes than in the fall.
It's the Fox River. You're gonna catch males like this. You're gonna catch 25 inchers. Just one of those things, but man, is it fun catching them on, you know, a jig, light tackle. It's fall time frame. I mean, these fish are here to feed. We have a nice day in November, and it's fun to catch a bunch of fish like this, no matter what the size is.
In a river, there are many traditional style baits that you can use. They all work well, but anglers like Korey are always looking for minor changes they can easily make to a traditional bait to slightly increase how many fish they're able to catch.
One thing I like to do, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, fall time frame or any time throughout when I'm fishing, is I like to have an array of rods on my deck. I want to have baits that I can search fast with, I can cover ground and really figure out if there's anything around or how something lays. And then I want baits where I can really slow down, maybe when I see something I like or get a few bites on those search baits where I can really fine tune the spot and figure out the fish. And I always like to start out with something faster or heavier if it's a crankbait, but in this river situation, I love blade baits. Blade baits are very thin. I can get them down there fast in the current. I can fish deep with them. A lot of times when it's cooler, I pull it a lot slower than I would in the summertime. But it's gonna allow me to cover that water faster, maybe figure out if the fish are up on top in the shallow water or if they're out deeper, and give me a few hints. But it's gonna pick off the aggressive fish relatively fast and allow me to cover that water. Once I fine tune, and it's kind of one of those things that really shined once we figure these fish out, is a hair jig and a trailer of some sort. And the reason why I like a hair jig is one, it gives it a bigger profile, and especially in cold water, what's probably the most important thing I like about it is it gives it resistance. It's gonna let this bait basically slow its way down to the bottom, and also the trailer on the bottom with the action and the little curly tail of this 1/2 to 3/4 inch ribworm that I like to add to it. That resistance is gonna allow that bait to basically hover through the water a lot easier. When I pop my rod up, I like to hold it and basically use the river current as a conveyor belt to sweep this bait in front of those fish. It's fall. If you can just get it in front of their face, more times than not, they're gonna eat it. And that hair jig, a lot of times, is gonna allow me to control my bait a lot easier. The only downfall to a hair jig is that resistance when you're in deep water or heavy current. And that's when I like to switch as just a standard lead head jig with like a 4-inch piece of gulp like I have here. You know, it's more streamlined, allow me to fish deeper a lot more efficiently without my bait blowing back into the current. And so the combination of these 3 baits are gonna allow me to search and find those fish, and once I figure it out, really slow down and fine tune and put more fish in the boat. There's one.
Need the net?
Yeah, this one's got some good head shakes here.
All right. Feel good?
Feels good. They all go into the current underneath the boat.
Get them! Oh yeah! It's a little better one.
Yeah, not built as much
he's
as
not as chunky.
Much as it should be probably for the fall, but man, is it fun when they just crack those things. It just, you have no stretch line, so you feel everything, and then when a fish like this grabs a hold of it, I mean, you feel it. I mean, it seems like more times than not, when you get a bite on a jig, it's in their mouth, and so just a fun fish, you know, longer, not as built as much, but I'm sure he's got some buddies.
On the spinning rod.
Yeah.
Total Control, presented by Power Pole. 20 years of trust evolved from Total Boat Control.
So you've heard us talk a lot about this new Strike King jig, why it's so good, what causes it to be different than all the other jigs that are out there. But the one thing that I always stress is how this jig falls a lot slower and kind of darts and glides on the drop. That special feature coupled with different plastic tails makes it super unique. But there's one thing that's very, very important. Anytime that you're incorporating plastic onto a jig head, in particular to really unlock the magic of this jig, you want to make sure to run that bait up nice and straight. And, you know, in plastics, a lot of times we overlook this because we're in a hurry and we just fire that bait on there. But it's very similar to a crankbait. You want to have that thing nice and tuned. If that plastic is not on there nice and straight and even, it's going to change the way that that bait is running. You're not going to get a side-to-side action. It's going to be very erratic. So take a little bit of extra time when you go to rig up your plastics and make sure that that plastic is on there nice and straight. It's not balled up at all on the hook, and that's going to give you a lot more success.
One thing that's very important in the fall and even in the spring, or anytime the water temperature is cool, today we're dealing with water temperatures in the mid 40s to low 40s, and these fish just don't like to chase a lot of things. You want to make it as easy as possible, basically is what I'm getting at. And what I like to do when working a hair jig, a jig in a plastic, or even a blade bait is I want to control my fall rate. What I mean by that is when I raise that bait off the bottom, I actually want to hover it as long as possible, making it super easy for these fish. And so when I lift it up, I actually hold my rod, if not slowly keep lifting the rod to just hover that bait or glide that bait. We're dealing with the river situation here, and so that river is almost like a conveyor belt. If I hold that bait off the bottom, it's just basically going to drift downstream right into the fish's mouth, making it super easy. They don't have to chase. It's just one of those things where these fish are setting up a lot of times in locations where they can just sit there and let the current bring the food to them, and that's exactly how I'm trying to deliver my bait. A lot of times I'm casting 90 degrees to a 45 so it can sweep across. I can cover a lot of water, but the bottom line is you want to make it as easy as possible in these cool temperatures to get a lot more bites at the end of the day.
Looking for little clues while fishing for walleyes is a major part of your day on the water.
On the old blade bait, huh?
Yep.
Right on the back hook there, but not a giant, that's for sure. But you know, it's a bite. It's one of those things where in the fall, they might not necessarily bite right away in the morning, but as that water starts warming up, we got bright sun today, things might be getting going. It's a clue.
These little clues can help you turn a slow day of fishing into a great day if you pay close attention to every little detail. In this case, the warming water from a sunny day is making the fish more active. Very similar to finding warm water discharges in the Fox River.
One thing that's often overlooked with electronics, I feel, is when someone pulls up to a spot, you know, they anchor because they want to fish there, they often forget about it. But one thing I really like to keep in mind with my electronics and really pay really close attention to is side imaging. And side imaging can tell you a lot, even when you're on anchor mode or spot locked and anchored up. We're in a river situation like we are here today, but my side imaging is basically gonna smear. All the bottom that it's marking is gonna smear and kind of blur out. But anything that comes through that cone is gonna paint the same nice clear picture as if we are moving. And so I always like to pay close attention to that, because one thing it'll tell me is if a school of fish is coming through or how far away from the side of the boat those fish are. You know, a lot of times it often tells me maybe I need to cast out to the other side of the boat because there's a school coming through. And the one main thing that always sticks out when you're not moving is that shadow. You're gonna see that shadow more times than not than you're gonna see the actual fish mark or the white on this color palette here. And so I always like to pay close attention to it, even when I'm on spot lock, because it can tell me a lot of things that it might overlook otherwise. All right, Tyler in the back here. Not sure how big he is, he feels better. There you go. I mean, that ain't a bad one.
No.
I mean, it just all depends. If you can have your line tight, you can feel everything, you can feel every bite. Honestly, I didn't have my line very tight. There was a huge bow in it from the wind, and I didn't really feel the bite. It was just kind of there. But it's just one of those things where, you know, the right combination of the line, that no stretch line, fire line, you can really feel a lot more cut through the current. And I always like to play the angles too. It seems like if you can have the wind, you know, more at your face where you're pitching downwind a little bit, you can have a lot more feel. And it's just one of those things. Pitching jigs is tough. You know, it's one of those things that takes a lot of time to master, but it's so rewarding when you just feel that, you know, at the end of your rod. Let's get this girl back. She wants to go.
The next bite is brought to you by Mercury Marine. Go boldly. Tracker Boats. Fish the finest. Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Your adventure starts here. Berkeley. Catch more fish. Lowrance. Find, navigate, dominate. Precision Trolling Data. The authority in diving depth info. And Power Pole Total Boat Control. hot topics, leading information and tackling techniques to make you a better angler. Presented by Mercury.
You know, over the past 2 years, I've had the ability to run the Mercury Pro XS 4-stroke on my Nitro ZV20s, and I've been absolutely impressed with all the attributes. I mean, the whole shot's incredible, top end speed's incredible, fuel economy is absolutely amazing to me. I mean, I've run some of the longest runs I've ever done in my life the last 2 years, and to see how much fuel I've burned has just been shocking at how good it's been. But some of the things I wanted to talk about here are ways to, change up your Pro XS or actually add to the platform to make this motor even more enjoyable. And the first would be the throttle control system. And for those of you that are familiar with Mercury, you've heard DTS plenty often. It's the digital throttle that they have, and that is an option to add onto your Pro XS. And basically what that option does for you, there's no, mechanical gears. You're not shifting and hearing clunking into forward. As soon as you move that throttle forward, the boat's going. And a lot of people say, well, okay, so it sounds cool, but what does it really do? Well, on the Great Lakes and on some of the bodies of water that we fish up here, we deal with big, big waves. And the more responsiveness that you can get out of your boat, the quicker that that boat shifts into gear and makes adjustments in speed, the easier it's going to be for you to crawl up big waves and to run rough water. And that's exactly what DTS does for you. The second thing I want to talk about, and something that, the first ZV that I actually had with this motor on had C-Star hydraulic steering. And it's a great hydraulic version, something that most people are going to be pretty happy with. But one of the things that I dealt with is I came from, running the big inline 6 Verados since basically 2006 to going into a Pro XS platform. And I wasn't used to using C-Star hydraulic. I was used to using power steering, the electro hydraulic. And really, what I saw right away is in rough waters, it made me realize how much easier it is to drive through rough water with the electro hydraulic steering. So this year, I actually added that steering, that power steering, the electro hydraulic, onto the Pro XS, which you can do, and I would recommend that you do right up front if you're looking at repowering or buying a new boat motor package. But what you get then is you get the finger touch steering. I mean, literally with one fingertip, you can turn the steering wheel. There's no pressure. You can make 40, 50, 60 mile an hour or mile runs and not have hardly any feedback in the steering wheel, which is great in big, big waves. It doesn't tire you out. It's just very, very simple. Everything's very quiet. So when you couple all the characteristics that the Pro XS gives you with all the performance things, I mean, like I said, whole shot incredible, top end speed incredible, fuel economy incredible, but now you can also add that digital throttle control system, and you can also add the electric hydraulic steering. You are taking everything and putting it into the best package that you can possibly put on the transom of a boat.
There's nothing more frustrating than constantly having to adjust a plastic on your hook.
One thing I always like to carry in the boat, it's just one of those small little necessity things that I can't go without, especially with using a jig and a plastic, is having some sort of glue or super glue in the boat. And the reason for that, especially on a hair jig, you might have a small wired keeper on here which might last for a little while, but all I simply like to do with these hair jigs is have a little trailer behind it, to slow the fall. But I like to use just a little bit of super glue, so that way I don't have headaches, where I'm constantly readjusting. Just a little dab of super glue on that shank there, I can slide it up and I don't have to worry about it. I mean, I can fish sometimes a half a day or go through 10, 20 fish sometimes and not have to worry about that. But a little super glue goes a long ways and makes you fish way more efficiently with less headaches.
Many professional anglers keep small super glue bottles in their boat for this exact reason. Keeping that bait in the strike zone of a walleye as long as possible throughout a day is one of the most important things you can concentrate on. A little bit of super glue can help you accomplish just that.
Tyler. Oh yeah.
Good one.
Yep, this is a big one. It's right here.
Looks good. Oh,
There we go. There we go. I think my line jumped like 6 inches. You can see that bait. I mean, look at how far down that thing is.
That's the one we've been waiting for.
Oh, I got it. It came on just like that, but I mean, that is a Green Bay giant right there. I mean, we catch these in the summertime trolling, you know, even in the springtime, maybe in the river here, pitching jigs. But when they start feeding in the fall and they decide they're going to eat something, I mean, it is fun when they bite that jig. I mean, look at this fish. I mean, he's going to be almost a 10-pounder in the spring. Very cool fish, but let's get her back. See you. What happened?
I lost him.
Good one?
Felt a little better, actually.
Slightly looked like you all broke your arm when you set the hook.
My arms are a lot bigger than yours.
Fish way more efficiently with less headaches.
Good. Well, first time, no mess ups. That is, how is that? It's windier out.
To bring a lot of food or a lot of, let's redo that, is you get a lot of,
Not that easy, is it?
what do you say?
It's not that easy, is it?
You know, let me start that over. Today we're out here on one of the major tributaries on the Green 5. Yeah, location was 4.
Oh, yeah.
One thing I think that's often overlooked when it comes to electronics, especially one thing that's often overlooked when